This topic makes a lot of us so uncomfortable, but once you realize that it's actually serving you in the best way possible in the future, maybe not right now because you may not realize it now in the moment you're not trying to hear it, but once you recognize that it's actually serving you for the best, then you will come to realize and come to learn to appreciate and to respect it. And that word is rejection. Rejection. Rejection is something that if you're living life, you're going to experience it at some point in your life. And, I've come to the realization that the amount of times that you experience rejection is almost directly correlated to how much of a visionary you are, how much of a person you are who like to try new things, who go after new things, who implement, who execute. And, I feel like these people are always going to experience it at a higher level or at a more frequent level than someone who may just be coasting through. But nevertheless, it is something that if you're breathing, you're going to experience rejection at some point in your life. Trust me and believe it. And so, this may show up in so many different ways. Rejection can show up and so the most common way I usually think of it is like when you're applying for a job. You apply for a job and you didn't get the job you wanted, or you pursue the guy or the girl, and they not feeling you like that. And so they reject you. Or maybe, you see an opportunity that you really desired, something that's going to really elevate your life in some type of way. And then it just slipped through your fingers. It just didn't come through in the way that you had hoped. And so eventually you were rejected. And, rejection is something that happens, like it is what it is. And it feels like this hard stop, like don't pass go. And it's something that like you have zero control over. And I think that's what makes it very difficult. And the hard part about it and make it difficult to process is because when you don't have control over something, that's very, very difficult. And so once rejection is in your face, most of the time, it is what it is at that point. But I just want to let you know that when you experience rejection, it is not the end of the world, okay? It is actually many times often a sign of redirection that something much greater is on the horizon. Something much better is coming, something that you can't see in that moment. Because in that moment, you ain't trying to hear that really, honestly. You ain't trying to hear all the things that, like people trying to encourage you or trying to get you to see the bright light. Like you ain't trying to hear that in the moment. In that moment when it's like sore and it's fresh, you're not trying to hear it at all, okay? You like, dang, I just got rejected. And so you're still processing the feelings of being hurt and being overwhelmed and all of those things, which is quite understandable. But I just want to remind you again that rejection oftentimes leads to, well, actually, many of the times it leads to redirection to something greater that God has planned for your life, that He's had planned all along, because He knew that you were going to get rejected before you got rejected. You just didn't know it. And so you have to simply trust the process. And so we're going to talk about rejection, how it actually guides us. Like, what does rejection teach us in the moment throughout the process, and how it ultimately prepares us for what's ahead, like what to expect, like all the things that's ahead, all the dreams, all the goals, all the desires that we hope to achieve one day. How is it preparing us for that? And so my hope and prayer is that by the end of this conversation, you will see rejection not as just a barrier, but instead like a bridge that's going to so graciously take you to your next level, even when in that moment it may not feel so gracious at all. First of all, what is rejection? Because we all have our own thoughts, our own feelings. We know how it makes us feel, okay, when we're rejected. But at its core, rejection is a denial or a refusal of something that we truly desire in our heart. We like really desire, right? It's basically when you have a desire to go full wholeheartedly after something and then you end up hearing the words no or not today. And that's ultimately what rejection is. And when you get rejected, it hurts. Like, I know it hurts. It hurts, right? That's the thing. And I don't know too many people who can feel rejection and not at the core feel some type of emotion. Now, there will eventually come a time when you're on this journey long enough that you will be able to manage your rejection and the feelings, like how you feel when you get rejected, and it doesn't overwhelm you as much as it once did, but you're still going to feel something. I guarantee you that. If you put your time and energy into applying for something, into going after an opportunity, and then you're faced with a flat out no, in that moment, you're going to process that, and you are going to feel it. Like, let's be real. Let's be honest with ourselves. You're going to feel it. But when you have the tools and you know how to redirect it, that's what, makes all the difference. It makes all the difference. And so even though you may be feeling hurt after getting rejected, it may at times even make you question your worth. It may make you question your past. It may even make you question your identity. Like, sometimes you can get so caught up in questioning your identity because you're like, wow, why can't this person or this thing see the value in me? And then you falsely correlate the two, when in reality, rejection has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with who you are as a person and your identity, because again, that is in the hands of somebody else's, and somebody else is controlling that. And so in these situations, I like to do something that's called reframing. And reframing is basically reframing something that's negative into a positive. And so what if we reframed our mind and said that rejection is not meant, or it wasn't meant to tear us down, but instead rejection was meant to build us up? Like, what if that truly was the case? Like, what if we thought that? Because what I want you to remember is that, again, rejection is not a reflection of your value. It's not a reflection of who you are. It's not about you being less than. It's not about you even being qualified. Most of the times, it's all about alignment, or even the lack of it, Like, just because something didn't work out, that doesn't mean that you aren't worthy or capable of that thing. And so when we shift our perspective, rejection often becomes less about what we've lost, and it becomes more about gaining this peace and gaining this clarity. So it helps us to see that what isn't meant for us in that moment, we see that more clearly, and then it allows us to focus on the things that truly matters. I'm curious to know, how do you view rejection for yourself? Like, do you see it as something that you can't push past, or do you see it as like a stepping stone to where you're like, okay, I was told no, but I'm gonna figure out how to go and get this yes? Because I think personally that however you review rejection, like that perspective shift changes absolutely everything, because now you have control over the narrative, right? Believe it or not, when you are rejected, that is the doing of somebody else. They have complete and utter total control. But when you take control of the narrative and the perspective, now the narrative is in your hands, because you can choose to see something as something that you can't move past, or you can see it as something like, okay, I was told no, but I'm gonna figure out how to go out there and get my yes. Okay, so perspective shift is absolutely everything. Now let's actually talk about embracing rejection as redirection. Like, have you ever looked back on a door that was closed in your face, and then you actually think in that moment, thank God that didn't work out? Like, what you think in that moment now? You know what I'm saying? Like, you think now, hindsight is 2020. Like, thank God that did not work out. And in that moment, you was about to cry. You was losing sleep because it didn't work out. Sometimes, we look at things and we apply for things and we want it to work out in our favor. But when we're rejected, you have to have the thought that thank God it did not work out. Because in that moment, rejection, again, it felt like a loss. But you'll eventually begin to see that whatever rejection you face was necessary to push you towards something even greater for you in whatever season of your life that you needed it. So at the end of the day, I think we really should focus on embracing rejection as redirection. Have you ever looked back, at a door that was closed or shut in your face, and actually think in that moment, like, dang, thank God that did not work out? You know what I'm saying? Like, you look back and be like, you really wanted that thing in that moment. But in hindsight, you look back and see how things worked out, and you're like, thank God it did not work out. And so sometimes we have to look at things that didn't work out and realize that it was in our favor. And, in that moment, again, we think that it was a bad thing, we're crying, we're upset. But God was like, listen, I'm going to have to force this rejection to happen, because they ain't going to act right, And so what we thought was a loss was actually a blessing. It was a redirection to push us to where we needed to be in a season of our life, which many times end up being so much greater and so much better than what we thought we were getting at that time. And so that's what happens when we try to do our own thing. And so sometimes God come in and be like, okay, I tried to told you, I'm going to have to force this door closed and shut for you. And it's going to look like rejection to you, but it's really your protection and your rejection. And in that time, it causes us to pause. Like we end up reflecting. And in that moment, that's when a pivot usually comes, right? And in that pivot, that's when we realize that that's what we're supposed to do all along. And of course, it's not going to always be comfortable. It's never going to always be comfortable. But you know what? You know what is always comfortable? Purpose. It's always purposeful. And so when you think about it, a no today could be preparing you for the perfect yes tomorrow. And I've had this instance many times in my own life where I received a no today. And then even for instance, let me use an example. So I've had a situation where, I will apply for like different programs. And then I get in on the first go around, not even the second go around, but then on the third go around, I got a yes. And the first couple of times when the rejection was there, in those moments, it did hurt. Like, it felt like the rejections was like, it just really hurt. But I just viewed it like, okay, maybe I'm not ready right now. Maybe this is not the season for me to be accepted into that thing. And then, when the acceptance does come in hindsight, it allows you to be able to appreciate the times you were rejected because it just wasn't your time and your season in that moment. So at the end of the day, when we focus on God's plan for our lives, it takes the stress and the worry off of ourselves and the things that we cannot control. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways, trust and submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. So basically what this means is that even when a door is closed in our face right now, we should not waste our times fretting over the rejection that we're receiving in this season, because we always have to trust and believe that a better opportunity is right around the corner waiting for us, and that our yes is coming down the line. We have to trust that we are being completely guided to it. Everything is so, so, so purposeful. So when we switch our perspective to this, it actually helps us to be able to process and to accept rejection in a brand new way. And then, another angle to look at it when it comes to rejection is protection. Like, how many times have you heard of rejection being disguised as a way of protection? Sometimes we think we want what we want. We think we know what's best for us. And in actuality, it's really not best for us. And, we can't really clearly see it in that moment. Think about a relationship that you've maybe been in the past where you know that this person was not the one for you. You thought you found your boo thing. You thought y'all was going to get married. Y'all was going to have kids, start a family, like all of the things. And then that relationship ended up turning out to be a very toxic relationship. And in the process, God Himself had to block it in some type of way. And so like, let's say you were in a abusive relationship, right? Maybe it was a verbally abusive relationship, emotionally abusive, physically abusive, whatever type of abusive relationship it was. And you are just staying in there like a sitting duck. You're not moving. You're just sitting there. You're just enduring it over and over and over again. Until one day you get fed up and you can't take it no more. And what's happening is that all those times when you're getting abused, that was actually rejection happening in the process. And you're sitting there trying to make it work out, saying maybe this person is going to change. Maybe they're going to get better. And all the things, you're giving yourself all the excuses. But the reality is that they were actually rejecting you with their behavior. And when you finally came to the realization that this is what it was, and you couldn't take it no more, then God made a way out for you. And you finally got the realization that maybe this toxic relationship is not for me after all. And so let's say you're 38 years old and that was your last hope in your mind, thinking like, I gotta save this relationship because I want to have a baby one day. And this is my only hope. And, now you're feeling bad because you were rejected through the actions of this person. Like now nothing's going to happen for you. But the truth of the matter is that rejection was just God's protection, because just imagine if you would have prolonged that relationship with that person. And now you have a child in a toxic situation that's going to have to grow up for 18 years plus in that environment, Like that's not something that God wanted for your life. And so even though the circumstances weren't the best, they had to happen in a way that they did so that you could get a reality check to see that that was not for you. And so in this case, rejection sometimes acts as protection. That job that you were so desperate to have, that job that was paying 6 figures, the one that was going to give you the elevation in your career, the status and all the things, the exposure. You really, really wanted it, but then you got turned down from it and you were rejected. And then later on, you found out that the company was not the best company for you. It wasn't going to be the best company for your mental health. They didn't treat their employees right. And it wasn't the best environment. And it would have worn you down, like mentally, physically, all the things. But you found this out after the fact, right? That is basically rejection acting as protection. That was God's way of protecting you. And so, we can't always see what we're being protected from in that moment when we're being rejected. And so it doesn't feel good in that moment. But sometimes it's best to just embrace the process and embrace the journey, because at the end of the day, God always knows. He always knows. And then also there's opportunities that you could have accepted that would have actually pulled you away from your purpose had it gone in your favor. So, you thought maybe it was something that was going to take you further to your purpose, but it actually ended up doing the opposite and pulling you away. And so, this whole journey is just like really spiritual. It's very spiritual. God can see things before we can clearly. And sometimes He allowed rejection to happen as a way to protect His own children. And so trust the process and believe that what He's doing for you and what He's doing for your life is always for your good. Isaiah 55:89 says that, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." And so rejection is just God's way of shielding us from harm. It's His way of saying, not this time, not now, but trust me, because I got something better for you, my daughter. I got something better for you, my son. Eyes have not seen, ears have not heard. So instead of seeing rejection as punishment or like you're not worthy, try to reframe it and see as protection, because when you adapt this mindset, it really does change everything for you, and you won't weigh the world of rejection on your shoulders so much. Here's another thing. Rejection is actually a gift, and that gift is the gift of growth through rejection. How does rejection help us grow? Because it stretches the crap out of us, y'all. Like, it will stretch you. It will challenge you. It forces us to dig deep, to find strength that we did not know that we had. You understand what I'm saying? Like, just thinking back to the feelings that I've had when I was rejected, like I said, it's this deep, gut-wrenching, gut-punching feeling that's that almost feels sickening, right? And it's like, you can't control it. You don't have any control over it. But out of all the times that I've personally been rejected, one thing that I do know is that it has allowed me the gift of resilience. It's giving me the gift of resilience, because anytime I'm rejected, I am even more determined to get back up on my feet and to figure things out, whether, if I need to figure out another door to knock on, if I need to pursue another opportunity, if I need to try that thing again, if I need to optimize, if I need to tweak, whatever I got to do, okay? I know that it gives me a sense of, let me figure this thing out so that I can try it again. So that challenge is actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing, because it's great if it's going to push us towards our purpose in life. And growth don't happen in our comfort zones. Growth, if we never had the valleys, if we never had challenges, if we never experienced things like that, we would not be forced to grow. We would not be forced to level up. And so growth happens in the valleys. It happens in the waiting season. It happens even in rejection. Yes, growth happens in rejection. Isaiah 40:31 says, but for those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. And so rejection can feel like it knocked the absolute wind out of you. Like it can have your knees feeling like doggone spaghetti knees. But it also builds you up. Rejection refines your character. It strengthens your faith like never, ever, ever before. And it prepares you for all of the opportunities that are to come, that's ahead of you. So just remember that when you're in the middle of your season of rejection, when you're in the middle of your season of no's, remember that it is temporary. It doesn't last forever. It's not going to last forever. The growth that it brings is permanent, though. It's everlasting because it compounds and it grows and grows and grows. And rejection is there ultimately to serve you. And so I want you so badly to change your perspective on rejection and know that it's not directly correlated to your worth. It's not directly correlated to who you are, to what you can do. It's not correlated to anything directly to you, okay? It's just simply a way to allow you to mold you, to grow you, to help you elevate. And so trust that God's plan for your life is bigger and better than any rejection that you may face, okay? Faith. Trust that God's plan for your life is bigger and better than any rejection that you may face. Facts. Rejection is not the end, my friend, but it's often a redirection to something greater. Feelings. It's okay to feel disappointed, but don't let rejection define your identity or your worth. Your faith formation for this week, say it with me. When man says no, God has set me up for his yes. Amen. Amen. And so your faith step for the week, I want you to take a moment to reflect on any rejection that you've experienced this year, last week, recently. Think about it and think on something that really stands out to you. Think on something that you've experienced and write it down. Like write down what rejections you've experienced, what lessons you've learned from it. How did it make you feel? Just really analyze and observe all the lessons that you've learned, from all of those experiences. And then look at how it redirected you towards something better. Like, did it make you take introspection and say, okay, I could have done this better? I'm going to try again next time, How did it redirect you, right? There's always a silver lining in being rejected. We just really have to open our eyes to see it. And so I want you to use these reflections as a way to see God's hand in your life, even in the midst of all the challenges that you may be currently experiencing. And remember that every no is a step closer towards God's perfect yes, okay? Friend, rejection may sting in the moment, but just know that it is never, ever, ever the final word. I hope today that you are encouraged and that you now see rejection as a stepping stone and you no longer see it as this stumbling block that's here to take you off your course because you got the juice, okay? Don't let rejection take you far off track because you're exactly where you need to be in this season of your life. Exactly where you need to be. So, as always, stay blessed, keep the faith, and remember, God loves you. I love you. You are loved.